as I said back at the lake, the Catskills are actually the remnants of that ancient mountain range from hundreds of millions of years ago. And imagine a commercial airliner flying at about 30,000 feet, and these peaks being as high as a commercial airliner, and that's as high as they were. And and now they're worn down to these little nubs. Worn down to little nubs. And I love to think about that, and the time it took for mountains to become not mountains, and for not mountains to become mountains. And I just love to ponder that. Now, I was talking to Paul Huth about the ice sheet and the chronology and the retreat at the ice sheet, this past one, 14,000 years ago. And at 8,000 years, the ice was still 600 feet thick in the valley at 8,000 years. So this Shungum Ridge that we're standing on was like this green corridor. Imagine this green corridor, this greenway that went from northern New Jersey up the spine of the Kittatinny Mountains and all the way to Rosendale, New York, which is about 6 or 7 miles to the north of here, and stop. Now this was a greenway into the ice sheet. Imagine 600 feet of ice down there. And so I asked Paul, actually a guest asked me a question which prompted me to ask Paul, for me to do a little research with him, because the guest asked me, was it much colder back then? And my instinct told me that, yeah, it probably was in the winter, but my instinct told me that it was really hot in the summer because of all that reflective radiant energy. So Paul, I imagined it was over 100 degrees here in July 8,000 years ago. And Paul said, yeah, that's true. It probably most likely was. At least a high temperature would be well over 100 degrees. It's hot, or it's hotter than it is now, which is crazy. So I imagine living here. I always imagine living in colonial America, early colonial America, like Daniel Boone, and going out to Kentucky, like in The Last of the Mohicans. I have this real romance with that era. With who I am and what I love. But then I'm thinking, no, I'd rather live right here on the Shungum Ridge 8,000 years ago, because for me, I'd be saying to the kids on a hot July day, come on, get your bathing suits on, we're going down to the glacier, come on! And heading right down here and imagine finding big blue tubes of ice cold water on a 100-degree day, and the kids going, oh my God, check it out, Joey just went into the water tube, oh, he came out 600 feet down. You know, like that sort of stuff. That's what I imagine. Not that it was that way, but that's the way it would have been for me. So I imagine my ancestors felt that as well. Never had to worry about fresh water. Never had to worry about game. The area was, if people were migrating up here all the way from New Jersey, there must have been some big animals up here. You know, a couple of elk will get a small family through a winter, you know. So, and plus all the plants and just must have been a rich time to live. So, a guest asked, after the guest asked me about the temperature, talking further with Paul, he said, what do you think the change in annual mean temperature was between 14,000 years ago when the glaciers left and the beginning of the 20th century? And I'll pose that question to you guys too. Do you understand my question? What do you think the change in annual mean temperature was? Well,
not really.
Not very much?
Not very much.
Okay,
From when to when?
From the 14,000 years ago when the glacier left to the beginning of the 20th century.
Oh my goodness.
4 or 5 degrees.
3.5 degrees, good guess. 3.5 degrees. And what do you think the change was from the beginning of the 20th century to the present? Two and a half more.
That's a lot.
That's relatively a lot, right? So what took 13,900 years to go up 3.5 only took 100 to go up 2.5 more. So that's a very telling statistic. Right? But remember, global warming happened 14,000 years ago too. So what's going on?
Getting that cycle, the global warming cycle.
Intense, more intense.
Quite possibly. But the answer to that, for me, and I'm not a scientist, you know, but to me, when I'm a tracker, when I look at that, I'm like, well, I'm not really sure that I'm seeing all the pieces, so I can't really make a judgment. However, to me, and I'm not preaching here or anything to you guys, but to me, it's not an economic issue, it's not an environmental issue, it's not a political issue, it's a moral issue, for me, personally. Another